You sit down to do something simple. A report you've written dozens of times. An email that should take 5 minutes. A form you already know how to fill out. And somehow, 40 minutes later, you've barely started. You don't feel tired. You're not distracted by anything obvious. You just feel strangely stuck. And if you've ever quietly wondered why that keeps happening, the answer probably isn't what you think. Most people assume this is a focus problem, or a motivation problem, maybe even a character problem. But research into how the brain actually processes work tells a different story, and it starts with something most of us have completely stopped noticing: the near constant stream of small interruptions that now surrounds almost every working hour of our lives. Notifications have become so normal that they've essentially disappeared from conscious awareness. They sit in the background of everything. A message arrives. A badge appears. A soft sound plays from across the room. You might not even look. You might not even react. But something still happens, and that something is the part worth understanding. The brain doesn't treat an incoming notification the way we might assume. We tend to think of attention as an on-off switch. Either we're paying attention to something or we're not. But research suggests attention works more like a limited resource that gets quietly spent even when we're trying to conserve it. Every time something signals potential new information, the brain responds. Not loudly, not dramatically, but it responds. This response has a name in cognitive research. It's sometimes called an orienting response, and it's one of the oldest and most automatic things the human brain does. When something changes in the environment, even something small, even something peripheral, the brain briefly redirects processing resources toward it. Not because you chose to, not because you're undisciplined, because that's what brains do. It's a survival mechanism that never got updated for the age of the smartphone. What makes this particularly relevant to modern work is that most of the tasks people are trying to complete aren't just mechanical. They require what researchers call working memory, which is the brain's ability to hold several pieces of information active at the same time while doing something with them. Writing, editing, planning, calculating, even organizing a simple response to a complex question. All of these depend on working memory staying loaded and available. And here's where the problem becomes clear. Working memory is genuinely fragile. Research consistently shows that even brief disruptions can cause its contents to partially or fully collapse. You're holding a thought, structuring a sentence, tracking a logical sequence, and then something signals in the background. The orienting response fires. Resources briefly redirect, and what you are holding starts to fade. You don't lose it all at once, but you have to reload it, rebuild it, find your place again. That process takes more effort than most people realize, and it happens invisibly. Consider what a typical desk environment actually looks like now. A laptop with a browser open, several tabs, an email client in the corner, a phone face up on the desk, a chat application running in the background with a number that climbs slowly throughout the day, and somewhere in the middle of all this, a person trying to finish a paragraph or work through a decision. Every one of those channels is capable of producing a signal at any moment. The brain knows this. Even when nothing arrives, the anticipation of arrival is itself a form of cognitive load. Research on this specific phenomenon suggests that simply having a phone visible on a desk, even face down, even silent, measurably reduces available cognitive capacity for the task at hand. The brain is not fully present in the work. Part of it is always monitoring, and that monitoring isn't free. It costs something, quietly, the entire time. This is worth sitting with for a moment. The difficulty you feel when trying to do straightforward work in a notification-heavy environment isn't a sign that the work is too hard. It's a sign that your brain is doing two things simultaneously, trying to engage with the task and trying to stay aware of everything that might demand attention. That split is real, it's measurable, and it accumulates across an entire day in ways that feel like fatigue but aren't really tiredness in the traditional sense. Office workers describe this experience without always knowing what's causing it. The feeling of having been busy all day but accomplished surprisingly little. The sense that simple tasks somehow took far longer than they should have. The strange mental exhaustion at the end of a day that didn't involve anything physically demanding. This isn't laziness. It isn't a lack of effort. It's what happens when the brain's limited attentional resources get quietly fractured across too many competing signals over too many hours. There's another layer to this that most people don't consider. When the brain learns that its environment is unpredictable, meaning signals can arrive at any time from any direction, it tends to shift into a lower-level state of alert. Research in cognitive neuroscience describes this as a kind of scanning mode, where the brain prioritizes environmental monitoring over deep processing. It's a reasonable adaptation to an unpredictable environment, but it's exactly the wrong state for complex thought or concentrated work. The brain isn't broken, it's doing what it was designed to do. The environment just wasn't designed for the brain. The uncomfortable realization here is that this isn't really a habit problem. You can't simply decide to focus harder and expect the orienting response to stop firing. You can't discipline your way out of a mechanism that operates below conscious control. The notification arrives, the brain responds, the working memory suffers. The whole sequence happens before intention can intervene. Knowing this doesn't make it easier to manage, but it does change what the problem actually is. It's also worth being honest about what this explanation does not mean. It doesn't mean that every person experiences this equally. People vary in how sensitive they are to environmental disruption, how practiced they are at redirecting attention, and what kinds of tasks demand the most from their working memory. Some types of work are genuinely more resilient to interruption than others. And some people, through circumstance or long practice, have developed environments or habits that reduce the number of competing signals they face. None of that changes the underlying mechanism. It just means the effect lands differently depending on the situation. This also isn't an argument that notifications are purely harmful or that technology is the problem. The same orienting response that makes a notification distracting is the thing that helps you notice an important change, respond to something urgent, stay socially connected. The issue isn't the mechanism. It's the mismatch between how much that mechanism is now being triggered and the kind of work that modern life also asks people to do at the same time. What researchers have found, and what is probably recognizable to anyone who has paid attention to their own experience, is that the relationship between interruptions and effort isn't linear. It isn't simply that more notifications equals slightly more difficulty. The relationship appears to compound. Each fragmentation makes reassembly harder. Each partial reload costs more than the last. By the afternoon, the cognitive ground is genuinely different than it was in the morning. Not because you've run out of willpower, but because the architecture of attention itself has been steadily worn down. The next time simple work feels surprisingly hard, it might be worth pausing on that feeling for a moment. Not to fix it, not to diagnose it, but just to recognize it for what it is. The brain is doing its best in an environment that makes competing demands simultaneously. That friction is real. It has measurable causes, and it has nothing to do with how capable or disciplined or motivated you are. It's just what happens when ancient cognitive machinery meets an environment that changes faster than biology does.